unexplainable to me why your client wouldn't comply with that directive, when I made an order that they both were supposed to comply with the directive of Dr. Smith. Time set for case D19C. We have both parties and their counsel present. Counsel, would you like to make your appearance, please?
Richard Schonfeld here on behalf of the plaintiff. She is present.
Brandon Leavitt, bar number 11834, on behalf of the defendant, is also present in court today, Your Honor. Also at our table is Kimberly Bryant, our paralegal, who will be assisting.
Is there any housekeeping we need to do before we go into testimony?
No.
I believe so.
I see we have Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, is he? I guess you'll get into that. All right, so let's go ahead and let's turn us on there. All right, so at this time, are you going to call him out of order?
Yes, please, Your Honor.
Okay, so let's go ahead and swear in the witness.
Please raise your right hand. Mr. Shannon. You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, good, now we can hear you. All right. Go ahead, Mr. Schonfeld.
Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Shannon Smith, SHANNON, SMITH.
What is your occupation?
In this case, I'm a clinical professional counselor. I own lifestyle counseling consulting.
What's your educational background?
Again, in this case, I'm a PhD in counseling, Morgan State University. I think I finished in 99 and they awarded a degree in spring of 2000.
And have you been engaged in providing counseling services since 2000?
Yes, that's correct.
When did you first become involved with the parties in this case who I will identify as?
The first contact I had was in early 2023, and I believe my first session with them as a family was March 24th, and then we had a consultation session prior to that in February.
And who is it that is the person you provide treatment to in this case?
My primary patient in this case.
When you were first contacted in terms of providing services to, did you receive a copy of the court order, or how were you initially contacted?
The initial contact came through an email through Psychology Today, and then we had a couple exchanges in between trying to set up an appointment. We did set the appointment, and then I think I received communication from the father, had some concerns about the appointment, so we canceled that appointment. And then I received a few weeks later a notice from the court allowing for 6 sessions, which we scheduled March 31st through April 28th.
Okay, so did you first start providing services after receiving the court order?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, and when you received that court order, did you still want consent forms signed by both Mr.
And they did, yes, that would be correct.
Did you have difficulty in getting Mr. to sign the consent forms?
So the consent forms were sent out, and I think I had stated in the email communication to have those forms completed. I did receive an email on the day of the appointment with us still completing the forms, and we did by they had not been completed, so I believe we took a few minutes to complete them.
So how much of a delay was there between the time, if you remember, that you sent the forms to Mr. that he actually returned them?
It was during the time that we had scheduled a meeting on the 31st of March. And so he did them within the first, I don't know the exact time, but an estimate would be 10 minutes of the session.
So how long after, so he received them and filled them out within 10 minutes, or he received them and then you had a session and he filled them out?
He brought them to the session, and if you like, I looked at email. He said he was completing the forms that day and would have them done by the time he arrived. And when they arrived, I think he worked on it for approximately 10 minutes.
Okay, so my recollection is that there was an email that Ms. sent you and you informed her that signed or dual signed the consent form. Do you recall that?
I do. I can go back and check on the dates. I think that was prior to the 31st of March, because I requested them prior to both her and that would have been prior to the 24th of March.
Okay. And you didn't fill it out until he came to the first session, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. How many times, if you know, have you seen for purposes of providing therapy?
So when I watched, I saw him 6 times in 2023, 7 times in 2024, and then 1 time in 2025. Under care, I saw him 6 times in 2023, 4 times in 2024, and that's number 25.
Your Honor, is this witness, he keeps looking down to his right and doing something with his hands. Does he have any documentation in front of him, or I just want to make sure that he's providing his best testimony and not relying on anything?
Diana, can you answer that?
I have the dates written on this, if you can see them, file.
For the record, he's holding up a folder and he's saying he has the dates written on the folder.
Okay.
Yeah, they're just the dates of when the attended sessions.
All right. Mr. Schonfeld?
Okay, thank you. All right, so you testified that 6 times in 2023, 7 times in 24, and 24. Is there an explanation as to the disparity between the amount of times brought versus less in 2024?
Well, the agreement was we would continue with therapy with after the first 6 sessions in the beginning, twice a month, so they could each bring 1 time a month. And I think the summer 2023, there was just a lot of travel involved. And then in the fall, starting I believe in August, we tried to schedule appointments, and then that would continue throughout 2024. I don't know in terms of the disparities between, that was our agreement moving forward. And so the scheduling, again, was a number of issues in terms of availability. I think on Doug's part a few times, and I believe that was the main sort of reason I was aware of why there was any disparity between the two.
Okay, so 4 times and 7 times is because of issues?
Yes. I don't recall Doug canceling any appointments. I have to go back and look. I do think there was a few times where we had to reschedule just as we were trying to set appointments. And I do believe there was 1 appointment that was scheduled and he couldn't make it. It was a 4 p.m. appointment. We couldn't make it till after 5 p.m. So we rescheduled that particular appointment.
Are you aware of any times where you're willing to bring this to you for counseling when it was his custodial time?
I'm only aware of one email communication where he was concerned that I set the appointment. And again, part of that, at least the history with is in 2023, I had started a business called Mindful Healing Counseling. And during that period of time, I hired 3 different, and I did this, it was a co-owned business between Michaela Levine and myself. And during this period of time, we had 4 different administrative assistants who were taking over responsibility for my scheduling. So I wasn't always aware 100% of the time when calls were made to Mindful Healing Counseling for the scheduling. I think I had asked you to, communicate with me via email as far as confirming appointments, so I had at least an email record of them. So I do believe there is sessions that were scheduled or attempted to be scheduled that I just wasn't aware of.
Was there a point in time in 2023 towards the summer where had requested that he have some sessions with you before he left on vacation with, do you recall that?
I do recall that.
Okay, and isn't it true that you sent an email to asking him if he would be willing to come in for sessions prior to the vacation?
Yes. I believe so.
And did he bring in for sessions before the vacation?
No, I think that there was a number of what I was told potential issues on the dates that we tried to schedule.
And so, in sum, free to bring in for additional sessions prior to taking him on vacation, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of foundation, assumes facts not evidence, and calls for speculation.
Can I reword the question?
Sure. Do you recall and I can put these up if I have to, but it'll take me a minute. Do you recall that on May 10th, Ms. sent you an email asking if you got in touch with to the additional sessions before he went on vacation?
Yes, I reviewed the emails yesterday and this morning, and I do believe that was the emails.
Again, objection, Your Honor. Lack of foundation. These
All right.
emails and records, we went through this yesterday, again, without us being able to see them and verify them.
You have them. They're Exhibit 8.
Are they admitted?
So if you give me a minute, because he's not here in person, and I expected that he would be up until yesterday, I will get them up on the screen share. I'm just going to have to log into the Zoom. I have them, yeah. I just have to load them. Voila. All right. Do you see on your screen an email? And I'm going to scroll down, dated May 10th, 2023, from Ms. Fiore to you, where it says, "Hi, did you get in touch with to have sessions before he leaves for vacation?"
Again, objection, Your Honor. We're
Laying
reading, you can't read it in for the purpose of laying a foundation. That's improper. Move to strike, Your Honor.
You gotta let him read it, I think.
All right, let me ask you this. Mr. Smith, do you recognize the document that's in the screen?
Yes.
Is that a true and correct chain of emails from between you and Ms. dated May 10th and May 11th, 2023?
Yes.
And is that a record that you now maintain in the ordinary course and scope of your profession?
Yes.
Move to admit the first page of Exhibit 8.
Objection?
Yes, Your Honor, no objection.
Okay, first page of Exhibit 8 will be admitted.
Okay, so now, do you see on May 10, 2023, Ms. sent you an email asking for to have a couple of sessions before he leaves for vacation with Doug?
Yes.
And then you responded that you had emailed, haven't heard back from him yet. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so now I'm going to go to the next page of this exhibit and ask if you recognize this page to be additional email communication between you and Ms. And I'll scroll down to the bottom so there's no questions. All right, so now the whole page has been scrolled for you. Do you recognize that to be a chain of emails between you and Ms.
Yes.
And is that a record that you maintain in the ordinary course and scope of your profession?
Yes.
Move to admit page 2 of Exhibit 8.
Objection, Your Honor.
Page 2 will be admitted.
Okay, so on this page, so the first page we looked at was dated May 10th and 11th. The second page we're looking at now starts with, at the bottom, May 11th, where you had previously said, yes, I emailed back from him, correct?
Yes.
And then Ms. says, wanted to resend this in case it got lost in the shuffle. We can do next Friday, May 19th at 4. Do you mean to come back to you at all for the last few weeks? Do you see that?
Yes.
And then you inform Ms. out of town, you have some flexibility or availability, but you didn't respond in terms of.
Correct.
Then on May 22nd, Ms. you, hi Shannon, with or on Friday, possibly you can reach out to him to bring to you this Friday. Do you see that?
Yes.
With an every other week treatment plan for now? Question mark. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then you responded on May 23rd, I haven't got a final confirmation in terms of, correct?
Correct.
At that point in time, had not agreed to bring in for additional sessions prior to vacation, correct?
At that point in time, that's correct.
And just for purposes of getting the full exhibit in. The next page actually goes back in time to the emails. Do you see that?
Yes.
Move to admit page 3 of this exhibit.
Objection.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, page 3 of Exhibit 8 will be admitted.
I'm going to go to the next page of this exhibit, page 4. Starts on the bottom with an email dated July 5th from Ms. You recognize that?
I do.
Scrolling up, there is a response from you to Ms. 2023, is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you recognize this page of the document?
Yes.
Is this a chain of emails that you now keep in the ordinary course and scope of your profession?
Yes.
Move to admit page 4 of Exhibit 8.
No objections, Your Honor.
Right, page 4 will be admitted.
Okay, so on July 5th, Ms. said in an email, hi Shannon, I get back for summer vacation this Friday. Can I bring him in for an appointment next Thursday or Friday? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so prior to the vacation that Ms. she had requested that see you for for some sessions before leaving town for an extended period of time, correct?
Yes.
Waited for those sessions to happen, correct?
Well, an email exchange, and there was, I did reach out, and there was an attempt to do so. I believe the final email, and I can pull it if we need to, it wasn't working with the schedule.
Okay,
So we did not, so to answer your question, we did not schedule prior to the vacation.
And then Ms. scheduled before back into town from vacation for a session with you, correct?
I believe that's correct, yes.
We're going back in time, because unfortunately that's the way this was ordered, produced in this order. Going back to June, I'm on the next page of this exhibit. You see on June 5th, Ms. sent an email to you with Mr.
Yes.
And the top of the email is a response from you, including Mr. 13th, is that correct?
That is correct,
And
yes.
is this a document that you maintain in the ordinary course and scope of your profession?
Yes.
Okay, so on June 5th, again, prior to going on the summer vacation with this, an email that said, that we saw you on Friday. I'm hoping to have one more session before he leaves to Ohio for summer vacation. He's CC'd here so you can coordinate. Do you see that?
Yes.
And she further said, recently the court made it clear that a joint email is not against our order. Do you see that?
I do, yes.
And did you understand that at this point in time you were permitted to have joint communication with Mr.
That was my understanding, and I mostly try to send emails to coordinating, scheduling, so I was informed by one occasion, I think we talked about it a couple of times as well in person, but that wasn't the case, and so I try to keep it as simple as possible. And then I said I would send a joint email, regarding scheduling, in order, they didn't have to respond, but I said I could send joint emails when necessary.
Okay, and after the June 5th email from Mr. you and Mr. Between that time and June 13th, you did not receive a response from Mr.
Not to this chain.
Ms. and sent another email on June 13th saying, I'm bumping this, is something set up before he goes on vacation? Do you see that email?
Yes.
I don't know if I moved to admit this page, but I am going to move to admit this page at this time.
You didn't, but no objections.
That'll be admitted.
So that's page 5. And then you responded to Ms. bumping the email chain up into people's inboxes with, hi, anytime this week, please let me know what works for you. Correct?
Yes.
But again, nothing was scheduled by Mr. Correct?
At that time, no.
And then I'll move to admit the last page of the exhibit just for completeness. There's nothing on it, just no confidentiality disclosure.
Right.
And that's the entirety of
All
exhibit 8.
Excuse me, all of exhibit 8 is admitted.
How do you charge for your sessions with?
All sessions were charged using Square.
And what is the fee per session?
The regular fee is $150 an hour plus a processing fee, usually $5, $6, $7.
When you initially met with Mr. and also met with Ms. did you request credit card information so that you could bill for sessions?
Yes.
Did Ms. her credit card information?
Yes.
Did Ms. credit card information?
Yes.
How did he give it to you?
There were two forms that were given. One is the credit card form that everybody fills out, just authorizing ongoing fee charges. And then I know at one point the city maybe lost a credit card and was waiting for everyone to be issued. And so I believe afterwards I processed that credit card in Square and received a copy of it. So.
Did Mr. give you his credit card information on 3 pieces of scrap paper?
There was one occasion where that happened, and I think he just wanted to keep the numbers separate. So that did happen.
Who has been paying for this therapy with you?
Objection vague and ambiguous.
How's that making it ambiguous? In 2024, who paid for therapy sessions?
Again, vague and ambiguous. That's 12 months.
That's right.
So
Go ahead. Go ahead, doctor, you can answer that.
yeah, I mean, just to make it simple, like the agreement was whoever bought they would pay, and so she would pay, I would charge her card, I would charge his card.
Okay, even though the court order says they're supposed to split the expenses 50-50. Are you aware of that?
Yes, I am, and I think in my discussions with them, that would amount to 50-50 if they were each bringing them equally, which again, we had agreed upon.
But they're not bringing it.
Well, it didn't end up being that way.
We're already in May of 2025, and you testified that Ms. has brought once and brought 0 times. Is that correct?
Yes.
How often is it that you would like to see at this point?
Well, my recommendation was 2 times a month, 1 by each parent.
Okay, going to the substance of your treatment with this. In the 7 times that in 2024, strike that. 2023, they each brought 6 times. How many times when did you have the opportunity to visit with us alone?
All of my sessions with were joined.
So 2023, the 6 were with 2024, the 4 were in the room. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is that by your design, something you requested?
So what I had said to both, my preference in approaching their particular work groups would be to have approximately half to maybe 3/4 of the time individually. And again, if there was a need for full sessions, we could do that. But that's typically sort of that format, the standard format that I prefer to use. In this case, it didn't work out that way.
When Ms. brought this, how many of the 6 sessions in 2023 did you have the opportunity to communicate without Ms.
Approximately half of those sessions, the first 3 sessions with were joint sessions.
Okay, and then the next 3 were independent of.
We had some time together, yes.
What about the 7 where Ms. brought in 2024? Of the 7, how many times did you have an opportunity to visit with alone?
During the 2024 year, all of the sessions were approximately half to 3/4 of the time.
Do you feel that he expresses himself more openly when he's alone?
to answer that question. There's a noticeable difference when he's alone, for sure, in previous sessions, versus when he was together with his mom in terms of openness. So I think there's some variance across each session that occurred. But yes, I think did quite well expressing himself when he and I worked together individually.
And you wouldn't know whether or not he would express himself more without, you never had that opportunity, correct?
Objection calls for speculation.
Well, I can maybe answer the question, two ways. Like the first one would be, again, back to just sort of a formatting and procedural, discourse that I like to use. I would prefer half the session with, without any parent in the session. I feel like it gives the opportunity to build trust, reassurance that any child can have time with the therapist for expressing themselves, whether it's in play, whether it's through other expressive means or verbally. And so I would answer that question saying my preference would be, and would have been with both parents to maintain that standard format.
Have you ever expressed that preference to?
We talked about the format at the beginning and several times throughout, and so I think the preference was conveyed, yes.
Did you why he would not honor that preference?
Objection, lack of foundation, and assumes facts not in evidence. Your Honor, there's been no testimony that to do that.
Well, the testimony was that he expressed that he preferred to be with alone in sessions, and the testimony was that he has never had a session alone with.
Okay, but the question was that he would be served better by, and that has not been established.
No, my question was why he would not honor that
We don't have to
preference.
hide the ball here. All children attend counseling on their own. The point is for their counseling to be on their own. And it is unexplainable to me why your client wouldn't comply with that directive when I made an order that they both were supposed to comply with the directive of Dr. Smith. This is for the treatment of their son. It's not.
It's been established that it wasn't in fact a directive that he was supposed to be alone in these sessions.
He just testified that was his preference.
Preference is not a directive.
And your client's testimony on that yesterday also is not lost on me.
Dr. Smith, did he explain to you why he was not going to honor your preference that have alone time with you during the sessions?
So in my conversations with the formatting of the sessions, always expressed interest to want to work on relationship issues between he and so I think what I had agreed to was to have the opportunity at some point to work with individually as I just stated, and I think every beginning of every session it started out at least with the idea that we would do that and meet first and work on some things, and we did, and the sessions just ran to the end. And so my sense is he was not totally opposed to the idea, at least in his statement to me, but the sessions always sort of began with wanting to continue to talk about the relationship issues between he and Nicholas.
What kind of relationship issues were there between?
So we were working on trying to improve communication. Was one, express emotions and feel comfortable with being able to express a wide range of emotions, and talk about and process through points of disagreement or conflict around parenting issues.
So in 10 sessions where he had not expressed to you that he would prohibit from being alone with you, it just never happened?
Yes, I would say that that is how it unfolded.
And eating up the time of the entire session?
I'd probably characterize it a little differently. I would say the work that we did during that time was more parent-child focused rather than individually focused.
Was there ever a point in time where you believed that it would be easier to have consistent scheduling for appointments if it was only Miss that was scheduling them?
Well, no, the problem with the scheduling was, like I said, over the course of the treatment period, I had five, including the Regis office, different office administrative assistants who typically are responsible for scheduling. And what I said to them was they could always call in the beginning the Regis office front desk, and afterwards they could call the Mindful Healing office, and we could do the scheduling that way. What I wanted to do, because I knew we would end up here in court, is to have a record of each of the appointments from them verifying the scheduling. And in order to make that process a little bit easier, we did try to attempted to, aside from the administrative assistants doing the scheduling them when they emailed me. So there was sort of two planes of being able to do that throughout the course of my time with them.
Okay, so to get to my question though, did you ever contemplate that it would be more consistent if it was just the counseling sessions?
So I don't think I contemplated that, so my answer would be no. I would say though, in response to that, the emailing and scheduling was much easier. We didn't have as many obstacles, I would say, appointments, other time frames that weren't available. It just seemed like it was always a little bit more difficult for availability purposes.
First started providing treatment for, did you have a joint session with, or maybe it was just
I spoke to that earlier. I did a consultation session with them together, and it was a joint session, and it was prior to the March 24th date when I received the order to begin working with them.
do you recall at that joint session a statement consistent with that he would be in conflict for another 11 years?
I believe the statement that he made during that particular session was in, because we had talked about a lot of the history of conflict, was in reference to his feeling or belief that resolving the conflict would be difficult. So I made a statement along those lines. I don't recall the exact statement.
Do you find it to be difficult to communicate with?
I would say there have been definitely points of communication with difficult. I do believe that communicate effectively, and I did have a few one-on-one sessions scheduled aside from where I feel like I was able to communicate very effectively, understand sort of his view on things, and I do feel like some information in that session that I wasn't aware of about his, some of his life experiences and his own struggle with things like anxiety. So I do think maybe sometimes anxiety becomes an issue for prevent
Objection, Your Honor. This is expert testimony. This person is not qualified at this particular juncture and has not evaluated my client and cannot render an expert opinion as to anxiety of my client.
Well, I agree with that statement, and I'm not suggesting that I did that in the context of diagnosing and assessment. What I am saying is that.
Would you please rule on my objection?
Overruled.
You can continue, Dr. Smith.
Okay, yeah, sorry, there's just a little delay. I'm not trying to step over anybody's procedural framework here. And I'm stating that in the context that I do believe we communicate effectively. I just think in my experience working with that that has, been at least what I observed and admitted to be having some difficulty at times communicating effectively.
Are you aware?
In terms of
Sorry.
Issues, I feel like we were able to reach some resolution on a few points. So I think under the right conditions, it was more effective communicating.
Did he disclose to you that he has diagnosed mental health issues?
Yes, he did.
Are you aware that he was diagnosed with ADHD?
I believe that was what he had stated to me.
Are you aware that he was diagnosed with OCD?
I believe that was another one that was stated to me.
Are you aware that he was diagnosed with anxiety?
Yes, that's my understanding. That was another one that was disclosed to me.
Are you aware that he's diagnosed with depression?
I don't recall specifically that it was depression. So I would say no, I wasn't aware that he was given that particular diagnosis.
Are you aware that he was diagnosed with having suicidal ideations?
Objection, Your Honor. Assumes facts, not in evidence.
It might be in evidence that you're talking about Dr. Holland's
I
report.
am, Your Honor.
Yeah, I can answer the question. I was not, so the answer would be no.
Do you believe, based on your observations, not asking for an expert opinion, but based on your observations, do you believe that the 4 diagnoses that you are aware of, the ADHD, the OCD, the anxiety, I guess it was 3 that you're aware of, do you believe that those have negatively impacted co-parent?
Again, Your Honor, objection. He is not an expert witness and cannot opine as to his professional opinion about my client's ability to co-parent.
I'm asking for his observations.
This entire analysis is related to the child, not my client.
Well, since your client had individual sessions with him, I don't know that that's the case. There
Which
might
the
be
evidence
other
is not
ones.
here.
Yeah, he did testify. Did you hear him, not hear him testify?
Your Honor, I'm talking about documentary evidence. Does he have progress notes about those?
Oh, I'd be happy to have him produce those too. Didn't think of that.
Yeah, again, the entire point of this was we weren't going to go into this because we don't have the records to review. This is prejudicial, Your Honor. This is prejudicial.
Well, the only person that's prejudicial to is Mom, because I don't know if she knew that he was seeking individual treatment with Dr. Smith too. And nobody knew that. Did you know that, Mr. Leavitt? I didn't know that. Did Mom know that?
Did you know that?
Yeah, again, Your Honor, the entire point of these meetings were to coordinate care for not to evaluate.
His professional treatment and his professional opinion of what is the problem between these 2 parents. I think nobody disagrees that there is a co-parenting problem here. What I need to know is where the problem is, how do we fix it, how does it impact. I need to know those things. So I think it's fair for him to give his observation of what the issues are on both parent sides. And I assume you'll ask him the same questions about what Mom's contributions are to this problem. There's a problem here between these parents. It's been a problem a long time. How much it impacts is what I don't know, and hope that both counselors can give me some insight into that.
Objections overruled, Your Honor.
Overruled, yes.
You can answer, Dr. Smith.
So the answer is yes. I do believe that when it comes to anxiety, like it does play a role in, parenting, and that would be the nature of my discussion with around his disclosure of, his mental health issues. And we did talk about sort of, and that was not treated for his conditions. I was working in the context of how these things, work in relationship to Nicholas, as well as co-parenting at times when those things become problematic. So our discussion was around sort of regulatory processes in the context of, being parents as well as communicating with G.
Can you describe for the court your observations and beliefs as to his relationship with his mother?
Could you maybe state the question one more time?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how would you describe the relationship that he has with?
I believe that in my observation and what was reported to me both, they have a very positive relationship. In my work together with them, I think I was able to help facilitate, again, greater expression of feelings, thoughts and ideas. I do feel like I'm actually offering us a lot of opportunities in terms of learning, such as, extracurricular activities, such as learning language. I know that they did some travel together. Expressed to me always her concern about in school, and she reports sort of her duties, making sure that school's done, and concerned about his education, and as well as his mental and physical health in terms of bringing it to appointments and trying to get him the physical care that he needs. So I think the parenting on is very good.
Would you ever describe as having a difficult time relating to?
Well, I don't say it was a difficult time relating to. They had what I would say would be typical child-parent conflicts around things that a lot of parents struggle with today. And one is screen time. I know he expressed some frustration with Jesus limiting the amount of screen time that he gets when he's with her. So we definitely had several conversations about that.
Okay, so you described some of the things that he does with this, and that's based upon your interactions and having that dialogue with therapy, correct?
Yes.
And you described extracurricular activity. What extracurricular activity are you aware of having engaged in as a result of enrolling him?
So my understanding is that his extracurricular activity involves sports, in addition to sometimes it was reported that he attended friend events such as parties, birthday parties, those type of things. And then, like I said, I know that they were learning the language. It was Italian, and so my understanding is that they were utilizing that when they travel internationally. Those are the main extracurricular activities that I'm aware of.
Do you believe that he enjoys being in the team sports that you enrolled him in?
Yeah, no, that's my understanding. He enjoys the sports, absolutely.
Do you believe, you discussed travel, do you believe that he has enjoyed the international travel that his mother has taken him on?
Yes, did talk about the travel, and other than maybe the long flight, I believe he enjoyed it and benefited from it.
And do you believe that he enjoys spending time with his friends that coordinates functions with?
Yes, it's been reported to me that he looks forward to those times.
Describe his relationship with.
Well, yeah, I think he has a positive relationship with and I would, make the similar comment that I think they've had some, I would say, typical issues that parents struggle with. Again, one is screen time. It's my understanding that, plays some of the video games with Um, we're not as much or as often, or on some of those games at all, yet, which is fine. It's parental preference. And yeah, and I think in my work together with, I feel like we were able to achieve some of the goals we had set out to achieve, such as increased communication, better understanding of feelings, learning to help express his feelings, identify those feelings.
Okay, other than playing video games, are you aware of other activities that engages in with?
So it's my understanding that he does engage with in his sports events. I know that there was one issue with picking up one sporting event, but he made that he tries to support him in the sporting events. I'm not aware of as many other events that engage, other than maybe travel back to Ohio at vacation time. So I was just never informed of any additional things beyond that he engages in. Those would be the ones that I'm familiar with.
So in your 24 meetings with, you've never been privy to activities that in with us other than the sports events and playing video games? And travel to Ohio?
So we have never discussed other specific events that either signed him up for or is engaging him in beyond those things. So I don't know if there were other ones. Like I said, those are the ones that I am familiar with and was informed of during our time together.
So you're not aware of any type of activity with friends, correct?
I don't recall a specific event that at this moment that was reported to me during their time where it was either facilitating or had brought Nicholas to such as parties or the like. That was we just never discussed that.
Talk to you about his friends?
We have had a few discussions about his friends, yes.
And those are friends that he socializes with at school and with Miss, correct?
Yes.
Did you ever observe that this has his own anxiety or stress related to issues with?
Yes.
Describe that.
Well, I know over the course of my time, and there were two incidences that I think were particularly upsetting. One was related to a dog, and then the other was related to a pickup from, I believe it was a soccer practice. And each of those events, I believe, Nicholas was upset about.
Okay, so let's start with the dog. What was that incident?
Well, it's my understanding that the dog had belonged to and was under her care, her watch, her ownership, and there was some discussion prior to rehoming the dog, and the dog was rehomed, and my understanding is that found out where the dog was rehomed and when it somehow was able to get the dog back, and I think definitely confused about that situation, and was not anticipating the dog coming back in that manner. That was my understanding. And
What was the soccer?
Nicholas and I talked about sort of initially, the reholding was obviously a decision that some parents have to make in terms of pets, and I know that there was some initial maybe grieving in the beginning, and then I think some confusion afterwards when.
Do you believe that undermined parenting abilities and parent decision making?
In my opinion, I would say yes to that. I do believe that situation was not what we had agreed upon initially in terms of my co-parenting rules. I could read those to you if you like, but generally it's the idea that there's any matter affecting any child or children that parents talk about those things, communicate about those things, and then have mutual agreement. It's my understanding that that did not happen. So yes to that question.
And then you talked about a soccer situation. What was that?
Yes, there was an incident where it was my understanding that take to and from practices, and I think they were both planning or typically would attend games together, and practices often would pick up from the practice. There was one instance where that didn't occur, and I believe was upset about that situation. My understanding is, and I talked, but I didn't quite understand his explanation as to why he wasn't there, and I spent a good amount of time just trying to go through what he did or didn't do in terms of, trying to contact the coach or somebody besides another parent. I was questioning whether it was like a group text or I didn't understand. I just never really got a clear explanation why he did not who wasn't there to pick up Nicholas that day.
Was upset that pick him up that day.
He was, and apparently there was like a FaceTime call. I think he was very upset that day and tried to communicate that to both parents.
Have you reached a conclusion that are not effective at co-parenting?
So that would be my conclusion up to this point in time, and just to sort of be clear to my testimony. When we started, I sent them a co-parenting statement and agreement. I understood over time that I felt like he was unable to do certain co-parenting activities, and various reasons that he cited in terms of his background and history. And so I think we had talked about in those instances, parallel parenting as an alternative in situations where he felt he wasn't able to co-parent with her. So I think what I have observed at least in my conversations with Doug, was try to do what was in the best interest of this. And in my sort of estimation of co-parenting activities versus parallel parenting activities, I think the parallel parenting model probably fits a little bit better in terms of what he described as sort of his willingness to participate in certain co-parenting activities. I think he always expressed a sort of desire to co-parent and a willingness to do that. So I don't know that there was ever a full agreement to my co-parenting rules and agreement. So I just don't know that that's, without some further work or intervention, if that's possible.
So your testimony was that you were willing to co-parent, but Doug was not?
Objection leading.
be worded.
Yes, you testified that you provided the parties with co-parenting rules, correct?
That's correct.
Willing to sign the co-parenting rules?
Yes.
The co-parenting rules?
In the first session, yes. Afterwards, we had many discussions, ongoing discussions about co-parenting rules in reference to some specific events, and the two that we just mentioned were discussed in reference to those rules.
And so after the first session to agree to the co-parenting rules?
I would say what we did is talked about differentiating between what type of activities and events he felt he could co-parent on versus ones where he didn't, and I distinguished, at least in my mind and in our discussion, those things would probably be more parallel parenting type of things that he felt comfortable with.
Okay, so willingness to co-parent was without reservation, correct?
Didn't hear the last part, could you say it again?
Willingness to co-parent was without reservation, correct?
I believe so. Express any specific reservation to co-parent.
To co-parent in some regards and unwilling to co-parent in other regards?
Yes, that would be my yes.
You would agree with me that, would you agree that it's not in his best interest for the parties to be unwilling to co-parent?
What I would
Objection
say
needed.
in this specific case, but also in general, if parents for whatever reason can't participate in a cooperative co-parenting model, then parallel parenting is the next best alternative. I do believe, as a therapist, I've been a therapist 31 years, co-parenting is a better model for children and teens. I think parallel parenting has limitations. It's obviously better than contentious co-parenting or coercive co-parenting. So in the instances that a parent can't cooperatively co-parent, I prefer the parallel parenting model.
You also testified, and correct me if I'm wrong, that even with the parallel parenting, full agreement with it. Is that accurate?
Again, objection assumes facts, not evidence.
Well, no, I would say in the instance of parallel parenting, I think Doug, that was his preference, and I think that's what he stated how he wanted to move forward in
What is parallel parenting?
So parallel parenting is the model where parents conduct when they're together, with their children, their time under their rules, even though they might be different than other parents. So there is no popular agreement upon trying to establish similar or same rules in the home as far as either discipline or chores or schedules. And in terms of other issues that might affect the children outside, medical, mental health, behavioral health, things that would be considered optional, such as taking children to parties, events, other things that might be scheduled during their time that they would have the opportunity to either say no to or not do.
So
There's a distinction between the two models in that regard.
So basically, the child would have separate lives at the separate households?
Objection,
Yes,
counsel's
in a sense that would
testifying.
be- Yeah, so in terms of that question, in a sense that would be true. Another example I could give is, with parallel parenting versus co-parenting, parents might attend the soccer game, where in parallel parenting, that would be co-parenting or cooperative parenting. In parallel parenting, if it's, the soccer game is during one parent's time, only that parent would go take the child and attend, the other parent would not go.
Did you ever find that the different parenting styles at the two houses was causing chronic stress?
I don't know if that's like a yes/no answer, because the the nature of my interactions with that period of time, I would say that would be an oversimplification. I do think the differences in parenting style, as it would in any home, certainly played out for, and again, just referencing the example I gave earlier, sort of more anger and frustration towards or, and we did work through, I would say, a large majority of it, and it did reoccur, I believe, on one occasion, but in the beginning, when we talked about the differences in rules between the homes, was able to identify that, it did make him more angry and frustrated that he couldn't have as much screen time. And so we were able to, I guess, talk that through and work that out. And part of the intervention at that point with at least from a cognitive behavioral perspective, was to understand that there were some differences and he would have to adjust to them and not hold animosity towards for having that difference. And I just have one last point. I think I spoke with Doug, the screen time specifically, and said, obviously in a co-parenting model, you could both agree upon at the same time, and you would implement the same time standards in each home. And again, I just know that that wasn't the case over the course of my time at Diagnoses. So that would be another example of, to implement a parallel parenting standard on that particular topic.
Isn't it true that you had encouraged co-parenting versus parallel parenting?
Yes.
But that didn't happen, correct?
Correct.
You've reached the conclusion, or you have an impression that co-parenting is not possible between, correct?
Objection leading.
Sustained.
Have you reached a conclusion as to whether or not co-parenting is possible between?
Well, yes, at this point I would say that I have come to the conclusion that in order for co-parenting in an effective, like I said, a non-coercive co-parenting model, right, I do believe that there would have to be some intervention for that to occur. So at this point I would say, no, that's not possible.
Do you believe that has benefited from therapy with you?
Yes.
Are you familiar with having attended therapy programs through his school?
Yeah.
Do you believe that those benefited?
I didn't talk in too detail about those programs that he was involved in. However, I'm familiar with those, the one program that he's in, and I do believe it's beneficial. So I don't have a specific sort of remark as far as how he may have benefited, but I do believe it was beneficial for him to do that, yes.
All right, I have nothing further at this time.
Mr. Leavitt.
Yeah. Dr. Smith, you were aware that had seen Dr. Monique, I don't recall her, something, Martinez Quiros, before he sought services with you, yes or no?
Yes.
And just for intents and purposes, I'm going to refer to her as Dr. Monique, we all do. So you did not talk to or coordinate care with Dr. Monique before you started services with, yes or no?
No.
And you did not obtain Dr. Monique's medical records or therapeutic progress notes of any kind before you started services with, yes or no?
Yeah.
You did or did not?
Didn't.
There was a question about emails back and forth about coordinating appointments between. You did not actually email on scheduling on or about May 22nd of 2023, yes or no? Again, Your Honor, the witness is looking at something and shouldn't be.
Do you need to look at your emails to refresh your recollection, Doctor?
Yes.
Okay. Do you happen to have the email dated May 22nd of 2023 in front of you?
You're referring to Exhibit 8.
Yeah, but he wouldn't have it, would he? No. So yeah, we're referring to the new Exhibit 8. Or not new, but Exhibit 8.
What was the date again?
May 22nd of 2023.
I have an email that I sent to Wednesday, May 10th, 2023 at 5:13 p.m.
What's the email address you sent it to?
Pardon?
What's the email address you sent it to?
Personal@yahoo.com.
Okay.
I said, I'm following up on a couple of things. Did you want to continue? I said, first, did you want to continue being? If so, did you have an idea of the number of sessions in mind? I said, thanks, let me know. He responded, May 12th and 11:09 p.m. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to continue therapy or not. I think we should take at this point, scheduling approximately another 2 weeks seems pretty low risk. We are going to be out of town for most of the summer, beginning in early June, and we'll have to at least pause therapy sessions at that point anyway. So this week will be Mother's Day weekend, so it's up to you guys if you want to schedule for this Friday. So on Tuesday, May 23rd, hopefully I said, you know, it's fun here, but okay, this Friday is a possibility for appointments that work for you. Let me know, thanks. Also, would in every other week schedule work for you? That is bringing in 2 times a month. One would be 1 time with each of you. And then he didn't respond. I responded. I sent another email Friday, May 26th at 9:26 a.m. I responded with the previous email. Let me know if you're able to meet soon. Thank you. Doug responded May 26th at 11:36 a.m. It usually does work, but when there's a holiday like Mother's Day, the custody schedule gets a little bit changed a little bit. And with one of us for multiple Fridays in a row. We'll also be out of town for a large majority of the summer. We could talk about scheduling an appointment if that works. Can you do 4 p.m. today? Thanks, Doug.
So, Dr. Smith, I'm going to stop you. It's fair to say that, again, you reached out and responded to you and was explaining difficulties with the summer schedule, yes or no?
That's my understanding.
And he was not trying to be evasive or not respond to you. He actually did respond to you and was talking about difficulties with the summer schedule. Yes or no?
That's what he stated, yes.
Okay. So you testified about a preference of having a parent not in the room versus a parent being in the room. In fact, it did not harm us to have for therapeutic sessions, yes or no?
Objection, foundation, misstates prior testimony.
The question, sir, was it did not harm us to have room during those sessions, yes or no?
It did not.
Just so I'm clear, you've never reported yes, have you?
No.
You have no reason to believe that father, do you? Let me rephrase.
No, I let him answer that question.
No, I'm going to
There's
rephrase.
a question pending. He hasn't answered it.
I get to rephrase.
Okay, let him answer the one you asked first.
Do you have any reason to believe
No,
that?
the one you asked, the judge just said.
That's what I'm asking again.
Okay.
Do you have any reason to believe that?
Well, I have reason to believe that there have been at least 2 incidences where parenting was, I did question it, and I came to the conclusion that behavior in 2 instances was not appropriate parenting. Now, would I put that in the larger context of how many mistakes parents maybe make over the course of a year? I think the capacity to be a good parent. I don't believe, any. I think he's well intentioned. But like any parent, including myself, I would say Doug could probably benefit from learning more parenting skills as we all do through the different developmental stages of our children. And I do believe, and again, the context of which we're talking about, there have been incidences where do not display good parenting. I'll give you one last example. I used to teach out of a manual called Good Enough Parenting. We certainly weren't shooting for excellent parenting. We were shooting for the basics, and I do believe, and has demonstrated the capacity to be a good enough parent. And I think there's room for improvement, and I did recommend both the positive parenting model and to get the book, go to the website. I think there's opportunity for growth in his parenting skills.
You would agree with me that no parent is perfect, right?
Yes, sir.
You would also agree with me that it's a relationship, yes or no?
Yes.
You would agree with me that, and you have no reservations about that, yes or no?
No, yes.
You have no reason to believe that act in his best interest, yes or no?
Well, I think there
Just a yes or no, sir. You have no reason to believe that act in best interest, yes or no?
It's a double negative, so I'm going to object to the form. You have no reason to believe, and then yes or no.
Again, do you want to reword it?
Sure. You have no reason to believe that act in best interest. Do you?
Well, I do have reason to believe that in his best interest, yes, I do have that reservation.
You never reported those reservations to any authority figure, did you?
Well, in terms of the standards in Nevada, there was no reason to, but like I said, the 2 incidents that I'm citing, again, it's my opinion, I don't believe that's, I do think he had good intention, but his behavior in terms of what he did was not in the best interest. So I'm separating the difference between the two. I think intention, as you said, he loves, and I don't believe he would intentionally do anything to harm him. But I do think, and again, I'm just giving you my opinion, the 2 instances that I was involved in and was concerned about were, I do think that not in Nicholas's best interest.
But again, you never reported that to anyone. You never called the police. You never contacted CPS. You didn't do anything about it, right?
Those incidences don't meet the criteria for that.
Are you aware that Ms. has a mental health diagnosis?
Yes.
Are you aware that her diagnosis is?
I wasn't informed of the specific disorder, but my understanding is that she does have was getting treatment for a disorder.
You would agree with me that Ms. contributes to the conflict between the co-parenting relationship of these parents, yes or no?
Yes.
And you have observed this discomfort or stress related to his relationship with his mother, haven't you?
Yes.
What were those stresses or discomforts that he has with Miss?
I mentioned one already, and that was just the discussion around screen time and the use of different devices under her care as one of those. Outside of the 2 incidences that we talked about earlier, there were other sort of minor conflict things related to scheduling that we talked about a few times, and sort of preference for the weekly schedule, and so we processed. Again, there was no, every relationship has stress. We would call that relationship stress, and parent relationship stress, is one that we all have with our kids. And stress with, outside of those two incidents, there was no incident that I was aware of that was beyond what I would consider normal parent-child stress.
You would agree with me that Ms. does undermine relationship with.
No, I wouldn't agree with that. I don't have any particular incidences where I'm aware that she was attempting to undermine in his relationship with me.
You talked about the incident with the dog and obtaining the dog. Did you obtain that information from?
All three sources. I spoke with all three parties about that particular incident.
And you would agree with me that he was happy to have the dog at.
Well, my understanding that from perspective is that certainly he was happy to see the dog again in that context.
You talked about explaining to you his background in history of co-parenting problems with Miss. What did he tell you? What did he give you examples? What did he say or explain to you about his difficulty in co-parenting, his background in history, as you put it?
Sure. Well, it definitely be a number of things. Like I said, in the first consultation meeting together with, I started to get some ideas about sort of the issue together. I sent a few documents, and so I read through those. And then along the way, we talked about sort of different events that had happened in the past. So I was aware of some of the history that reported.
You talked about signing the parental, I think you called it the parental rule form, and you'll correct me if I'm not using the right terminology, but whatever the document was that you wanted the parents to sign at the onset of the therapeutic intervention for the child. He did sign that form, did he not?
Yes.
You have no reason to believe that you cannot successfully parallel parent, do you?
No, I believe they can parallel parent.
You would agree with me that it's better for a child to have two parents in a child's life rather than just one.
Well, you've asked that question probably a million times in the course of my career. The answer is no. In some instances, it is best that a child does not have contact with one parent. And certainly, in this context, we could all think of most examples when there's physical child abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse. So in those instances, there would not be, that would not be the criteria for good enough parenting.
Do you think it would be better for to be removed from and be placed primarily in Miss care? Do you think that's in his best interest?
Sorry.
Your Honor, those are two different things. That's a compound question. I'm going to object.
Do you want to?
Yeah, I'll break it up. Do you believe that removing his life would be in his best interest?
No.
Do you believe that placing solely in Miss care would serve his best interest?
Solely? That's the same question.
Primarily.
There you go.
Well, I don't know what that means in terms of the primary care. Like for example, I don't know how to answer that question because.
Well, let me try another one then. Do you think that would be harmed by removing him from joint care?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the form of the question. I think Dr. Smith's looking for parameters of what that means.
The problem is those terms are loaded in terms of even legal experts can't agree on what they mean. So if you give him more specifics, he might be able to give you an answer of what you exactly mean. Using those terms may not be good enough definitions.
Do you think it would be in his best interest to be placed in Miss care for 20 days a month and in 10?
Well, I wouldn't know how to answer that question because I have been involved in cases like these many times over the course of my career. Typically what we do is, and I'll just give you examples of some of the standards or protocol. One might be an in-home evaluation of the two homes. Another might be, psychiatric, psychological assessments.
Well, what I'm asking you, sir, what I'm asking you is, do you think that less time with dad and more time with mom would be better for yes or no?
Well, again,
Just yes or no, sir. Yes or no?
So can you restate the question?
Yes. Do you think that it would be better for to have less time with dad and more time in mom's care? Would that be better for yes or no?
I don't know. I don't have a foundation based on my work with it looks at this point in time to answer that question either way. I'm sorry.
Nothing further on.
I have a few questions. Let's pick up on that issue. What is the level of experience you've had with treating children whose parents are in high conflict?
Sure. Well, so I'll just talk about my experience. Sure. Yeah, I have expertise in working with children. A registered play therapist, have been for almost 30 years. I've had plenty of training in working with couples and families, which incorporates the sort of family part of that. Type courses that will be on the topic. So I think I have a decent enough amount of experience. And again, in their specific situation in terms of high conflict, typically the choice between the two models I was talking about earlier, co-parenting versus parallel parenting, again, we always try to strive towards cooperative and co-parenting models. When it's not possible and those things become distressful to children, then we resort to the alternative, which is parallel parenting. And so again, in this situation, it does seem to be, at least at this point in time, and I haven't really seen either until last year, maybe minus that one session with them in February. My impression was that co-parenting model wasn't going to work.
Have you ever performed custody evaluations for court cases, like forensic work?
Yeah, so I have been involved in those for the first, I would say maybe 15 years of my career. The last 15, I've only been involved in a handful. It's not been my primary service offering or form of treatment that I provide.
What, if anything, do you think could help these two parents co-parent better?
Well, I'll speak to briefly the history, Your Honor, that I did offer that, and I did, in the beginning initially, believe that, that it's possible to do more parenting activities in a more efficient manner. I do feel the level of animosity on both sides would need to be reduced in order for that to happen, and I think there would have to be sort of increased level of trust between the two parties, and that I think there would have to be follow through on any particular agreement. It just does seem like we had a few points of agreement. We had maybe one or two times where the communication was effective and translated between the two homes. I just think it's the nature of the history. I just think it becomes a confounding variable.
And what is your current recommendation for treatment for?
Yeah, and just so you understand, Your Honor, I'm very fond of this. He and I feel like we have great sessions. We enjoy exchanging Pokemon cards and a few other things that I think are of mutual interest to us. I'd like to continue to see him, and again, if it's on any other week basis, one parent bringing them, or even once a month, I think 2 times a month would be, good for him, because I do feel like in addition to, or outside of any sort of parenting issues we're talking about, the normal stresses of any child his age, related to school, friends, and things like that. And so a lot of my work is teaching kids how to process emotions, identify feelings, and work through them, build friendships and other relationships, and how to process their own stress and anxiety. Like I taught a few really good effective techniques. The butterfly technique in the beginning that worked very well. And then he's so intuitive. I mean, he's just such a wonderful, he's just a great kid, and I kind of feel bad that he gets caught in some of this conflict at times. He's so smart, and I feel like he deserves, I don't want to say better, but he certainly deserves the effort to be put into the co-parenting that you're suggesting that can be effective for him, because I do think he's higher on. Yeah, I never tested him, but in my interactions with him, he's so smart. I think he has great potential, and I think it just could be, if it's fostered and he's allowed to continue these extracurricular activities, I think he's going to turn out to be an amazing kid.
So if I'm understanding you, your recommendation is still the same about seeing him twice a month, once each parent bringing you?
Yes.
Okay, and maybe a comparison to other families you've worked with, how much is affected by the conflict between his parents?
So if I were to minus the 2 incidences that I spoke to earlier, that were I would say the 2 incidents of greatest distress over the course of time, I think most of the incidences that sort of I was involved in over this period of time, I would say fall within a relatively normal range. Outside of that, I think those 2 incidences, again, would be exceptional. I do think both of those incidences put in the middle. And he was at one point, the sports pickup in that event, accusing one or both parents of lying. And so I think, I think those 2 incidences were definitely outside the range of normal stress with this kind of situation.
What did he think one of his parents or both were lying about on that specific incident?
Yeah, that he had gone back and forth a few times, first accusing, of lying, and then accusing his dad of lying. Again, I don't know, we haven't talked about it for a while, but I don't know what his final sort of resolve in his mind, but he definitely knew one of the parents was lying based on what he had been told and by each of the parents.
Because it seems like it was more than the normal, I thought Dad was going to pick me up, I'm disappointed because he didn't. It seemed a much bigger reaction emotionally for him.
I would agree. Yeah.
When was the last time Dad brought in for a session?
That was December 6th, 2024.
November 6th?
December, I'm sorry, December.
Okay, sorry, didn't hear you right.
Oh, yeah, my bad.
do you know why you haven't had Dad bring him for any sessions, or why Dad hasn't?
Since that period of time, I'm not aware of why that would be.
Okay.
There was, just to be fair, there was one point of contact. I asked to bring him in on the same day, and my schedule was full, I couldn't accommodate. So there was one attempt recently. That page. That was.
And I don't know if we were clear. Are you, you said you had a PhD. Are you a licensed clinical psychologist in that?
So in that, I'm licensed under the Marriage and Family and Professional Counsel Board. License number is 0033.
And other than what we've already talked to, do you have any other recommendations for?
Yeah, so what I would recommend for would be obviously, continuing his sports and, his extracurricular activities as we maybe had talked about. I think he's just so smart and has so many intellectual abilities that could be fostered, and so I would definitely concur with those type of things. I beyond sort of every other week counseling in terms of a mental health perspective, I do also agree with the involvement in the school activities that I think he attended. I think opportunity to deal with school stress and relationship stress at schools, as that program focuses on, I think is another good one. So I would say, any of those type of opportunities as well.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any redirect?
I just have a few, Your Honor.
Okay.
Dr. Smith, you've never found that coach.
In what regard? Sorry.
Like coaching him in terms of what to say when he meets with you?
No.
You've never found that a stronger rapport with than have you?
No.
You've never found that he failed to follow your recommendations or your recommendations were met with resistance?
No. Always follow recommendations.
All right, I have nothing further.
Two questions, Your Honor. Dr. Smith, you've never found that he's been coached by Dad, have you?
After my sessions together.
And isn't it true that he asked to have Dad in the room during his sessions?
So upon waiting area, I think there was, as I can recall, times where he did that. Yes.
So just so I'm clear, and for the court, it was his request that Dad was in the room for his sessions, yes or no?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. Misstates his testimony. He said there were times.
Okay, during times then, there were times when he requested Dad to be in the room for his sessions, yes or no?
That's correct.
Okay. Lastly, is it not true that you and email communication since approximately December 6th of 2024, trying to schedule sessions, but there have been problems in coordinating those, yes or no?
Should I answer that? I believe there were problems in terms of trying to schedule. So I'll have to answer the question. Yes, I think that, like I said before, there's multiple ways to schedule sessions with me, and I don't believe the problems were on my side.
But you would agree with me that yes or no?
I'm going to object, Your Honor. It calls for speculation.
I did have me via email, and I did respond to those emails.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further.
All right. One more question. Are you able to provide both counsel with your records regarding treatment?
yes, I can be happy to do that. And Your Honor, just so you know, what I typically do in order to protect the privacy of himself, and in this case, it's, I think, less of a concern, is both parents were actively involved in the session, typically wait to sort of have at least one court appearance. So I'm happy to provide them. I just don't think there's anything in there that neither parent doesn't know of, number one, and I don't know that would add a whole lot to sort of the nature of why we're in court today anyway. But I'm happy to provide them.
Okay, and it just, I'm trying to make sure that they have, because we have another session next Wednesday to finish this trial. So I wanted to make sure that they have any opportunity, the attorneys have any opportunity to look at it and see if there's anything they wanted to follow up with either party, or are you on that? And I've had Dr. Monique do the same thing, so that the attorneys have what they need to represent their clients.
Can you maybe ask how long it'll take? Because
Yeah.
I understand it's a paper file.
Yes. My understanding, you keep a paper file. How long will it take you to get them their records?
I fly to town Friday for my niece's wedding, back next Wednesday. I'm hoping that either do it tonight or tomorrow.
Okay. I'm giggling only because I understand, I've been practicing law that much, and I write more notes than younger judges may type it up. So that's why I'm giggling. I'm not giggling at you. I'm giggling that, yes, people of a certain age are more paper-oriented. Just our experience. But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. We're going to get back into what we have, redirect for the defendant, I think is where we left off.
Yes, Your Honor. Can we just maybe take a short break?
Sure. Take a 10 minutes.
Mhm.